6 lionesses were standing in a circle around a dying gorilla, and they were not eating. That was the first thing that broke my brain. I had been a wildlife ranger for 14 years. I had seen predators work. I knew what a pride looks like around a fresh kill, the noise, the movement, the fighting over position. This was none of that. 6 wild lionesses in open grass, completely still, not feeding, not pacing, just standing there, all of them facing outward, like they were waiting for something. I did not understand what I was looking at, and that was the first mistake I made. The call came in at 6:17 in the morning. Another ranger, Mwangi, 3 kilometers to the north. His voice was flat in the way that means a man is working hard to keep it that way. He said, "Daniel, there is something here you need to see." I took the binoculars before I took the keys. 14 years of this work teaches you the order of things. When I came over the low ridge and stopped the truck, I did not reach for the door. I sat there with my hands on the wheel, and I looked through the windshield, and I made myself breathe. There was a gorilla on the ground in the open grass. A male, large, dark, lying on his side in the red dirt. Even from 80 meters, I could see the marks across his torso. Long, dark lines, wet in the early morning light. He was not moving. Not the small movements of sleep, not the slow rise of a chest. Nothing. And around him, in a half circle, 6 lionesses. Still. My training said, this is a natural event. My training said, you do not interfere. But predators that circle a kill look at the kill. These animals were looking at everything else. I got out of the truck and grabbed the camera. Protocol for unusual events. I braced it against the door frame, pushed the zoom to maximum, and started filming. And that is when I saw it clearly for the first time. Every single one of the 6 females had her body turned away from the gorilla, shoulders out, eyes on the open ground, 2 facing north toward the ravine, 1 east toward the tree line, 1 south, facing directly at me. I recognized her immediately. A notch in her right ear, an old scar from a wire snare she had pulled herself free from years before I arrived at this post. I had filed separate incident reports on her for 4 years. In my head, I called her Nairobi, the name I gave animals who made me do extra paperwork. She was watching me the way an animal watches something it has not yet decided about. Not prey, not threat. Something without a name. And that is when I understood what was actually happening here. Predators face what they want. These lionesses were facing outward, toward the things that might come. They were not standing over that gorilla because they had found him. They were standing there because something else had found him first, and they had stayed to block the way back in. I moved wide around the scene on foot, staying low in the dry grass. The ground holds impressions out here like wet clay, and 40 meters from the gorilla I found the tracks. Hyena. Not one animal. 4, maybe 5, different stride widths. They had come from the north, approached to within 25 meters of the gorilla, and then stopped, and then scattered outward fast in different directions, as if each one had separately decided to leave. They had come. They had seen the lionesses. They had turned around. I stood over those tracks, and I made a decision I probably should not have made. Instead of going back to the truck and waiting for backup, I moved toward the perimeter of that circle, low and slow, approaching from the east where the gap between 2 of the females was widest. I was 10 meters from the edge when Nairobi turned and looked directly at me. I stopped. 4 seconds. 5. She made a sound I had never recorded in 14 years of field work. Not a growl, not a warning bark. Something lower and quieter than either. Then she turned back to her position. She had not moved toward me. I kept moving. I stepped inside the perimeter. 6 wild lionesses around me, around the gorilla, in open ground. No vehicle within 40 meters. No second ranger within 3 kilometers. Every head tracked me as I moved. The tight, locked attention of animals that are calculating, not drifting. I told myself I was reading them right. I kept moving anyway, because I did not have another choice I could live with. I reached the gorilla. I went down on my knees in the red dirt. And the wounds were wrong. I know what lion claws do to a body. I know the width of those marks, the way the skin tears in a specific direction. These wounds were different, narrower, deeper for their width. The edges were too clean. Only one animal in this region makes a wound that precise. This was not a lion attack. This was a leopard, and the gorilla was still alive. His chest moved just barely, with gaps between inhales that went on too long. His right hand was closed. I moved around to his front slowly, and I looked at what was tucked under his arm. A face. Small, dark, eyes wide open with the whites showing all the way around. A gorilla infant, both small arms locked around the adult's forearm, pressed flat against his ribs. 4 months old, maybe 5. Not a single mark on it. Alive. Staring at me. I sat back on my heels and I stayed there for a moment without moving, because I had been reading this whole scene wrong from the very first second. I had arrived with the conclusion already built. Predators, prey, natural event, reserve policy, do not interfere. I had been watching the lionesses and asking entirely the wrong question. I had not asked why this gorilla was here at all. A male gorilla does not cross 3 kilometers of open savanna alone at dawn. That is not how they move. They stay in cover. They stay with the group. Unless something happened. Unless he ran. Unless he ran and he was carrying someone and he would not put them down. This is the part I need you to understand before what happens next.
I understand.
2 weeks before that morning, I had read a GPS report on a leopard, large, male, collared, tracked under the reserve's conservation program. His range had shifted 40 kilometers north over 3 years. Not because leopards migrate naturally in that direction, because the land to the south had been cut apart. Farms, fencing, road construction pressing against the reserve boundary year after year. The reserve had become the only unbroken strip of land left, and animals that had never shared the same ground before were now pushed into it together, into a space that was not big enough for all of them. The gorilla group had been documented 6 kilometers north of where I was kneeling. But 6 kilometers north was also exactly where this leopard had been marking territory for 8 months. There was nowhere left for either of them to go that the other had not already reached. And that morning, the leopard had found them first. He had come in fast and low, targeting the side and the abdomen. That is what the wounds told me. And this gorilla, I decided his name was Kibo. I do not know why. I just decided it right then. Kibo had not dropped the infant. He had pulled it against his body and taken the attack and gone down still holding it. Still holding. Even now, unconscious in the dirt, his fingers were closed around that tiny form. Even here. Even like this. He had done the only thing left to do, and he had done it without letting go. I called the base and asked for the veterinary team. 40 minutes out, which meant I needed to hold that position for 40 minutes. Then I heard them. You cannot mistake that sound. Low, broken, irregular, the kind of noise that the back of your brain recognizes before your conscious mind catches up. Hyenas, in the tall grass to the north, more than one. They had come back, or new ones had arrived, pulled in by the same thing that always pulls them in. Blood. An animal down. A meal that something else was standing over. The lionesses knew before I did. Their postures changed as one, weight shifting forward, heads dropping lower. Nairobi took 3 steps toward the northern gap and stopped there. The sound in the grass kept moving, circling left, then right, testing, looking for a way in. I pulled off my jacket and laid it over the infant, pressing it gently against Kibo's side. Whatever I could do to hold the smell down. My knees were wet from the damp ground. I could feel the cold coming up through the dirt and into the bone. The morning was getting brighter. The sun was coming up fast. And I sat inside that circle of lionesses, and I watched the grass to the north, and I did not move. Then I felt it. Pressure on my right thumb. Small. Specific. The infant had moved one hand out from under my jacket. 4 small fingers wrapped around my thumb, Not gripping hard, just resting there. The way you rest your hand on something solid when the ground under you is not certain. I did not move. The infant's breathing was fast, the way small animals breathe when they are frightened past the point of making sound. But that hand stayed on my thumb, and I sat there in the red dirt, inside a circle of wild lions, with a baby gorilla holding onto me, and I watched Kibo's chest rise and fall, and I waited. To the north, the sound in the grass went quiet. Nairobi held her position for 30 more seconds. Then she stepped back. The hyenas had made their decision. They were leaving. And Kibo's breathing shifted. One long inhale. A pause that went on too long. And then something that settled into a slightly steadier rhythm. Not good, but not the same as before. The helicopter came in from the southeast, low and fast, sound arriving before I could see it. Most of the lionesses moved toward the tree line in one smooth motion. Not panic, just a decision made and carried out cleanly. Nairobi did not move. She backed up 30 meters and stopped. The lead vet came off the helicopter at a run. She looked at the scene, looked at Nairobi standing 30 meters away, and then looked at me, still kneeling in the dirt, an infant gorilla holding my thumb. She said, "You have been inside this whole time?" I said yes. She went to work without another word. When I tried to stand up and hand the infant over, it would not let go. Both hands locked around my thumb. Both small feet braced hard against Kibo's arm. I carefully worked its grip free and stood up with it pressed against my chest. It weighed almost nothing. It pressed its face into my shirt. Then it lifted its head. It looked up at me. Not at the vets moving around us. Not at the helicopter. Not at the lioness still standing 30 meters away. At my face. And it reached one small hand up and laid it flat against my jaw. Just rested it there. The fingers were warm. I could not speak. My throat had done something that made speaking impossible. Kibo spent 11 days at the reserve's care facility. The infant, a female, stayed with him the entire time. 3 weeks later, both of them were returned to the group. Both of them made it. But here is the part that changed how I think about everything I do out there. 2 years later, going through old GPS records from Nairobi's Pride, I found something I had completely missed. A drainage ditch on the reserve's western edge 3 years before that morning. 2 lion cubs trapped in a channel a construction crew had left open and unguarded. A ranger alone on that shift who had gone into the water to get them out. Nairobi's cubs, her drain, her specific pride. Someone had gone in for her once when she could not do it herself. I sat with that at my desk for a long time, with the lamp on and the savannah dark outside. I am not going to tell you what it means. I am not sure I am qualified to say what it means, but I sat with it. The last GPS ping from Nairobi's tracker on the morning of the incident shows her holding position 30 meters north of where Kibo fell. 11 minutes, not moving. Then the dot shifts west into the tall grass and does not appear again until the following morning. 11 minutes is a long time to stand in one place when there is nothing left to protect.